The name Bronny James has largely taken over sports over the last 36 hours. It's through no fault of his own. By all accounts, he's a great kid, but there has been a lot of discourse about him, his talent, his family, his parents, whatever. Maybe not his parents, but his dad. And I want to dive into it, okay? So Bronny James, we haven't talked much about him. We talked about him a little bit when he committed to USC in I think it was late May. And of course, we talked about him when he underwent just a terrifying incident in which he suffered cardiac arrest at practice. Made a full recovery. We're happy to see him on the court. That goes without saying 1,000%. But I bring it up because since he has returned, it has largely been a struggle, which, by the way, for a lot of freshmen who aren't five-star, can't-miss prospects, college basketball is hard. Everybody thinks it's easy. Everybody thinks everybody's going to walk in and dominate. That's not how it works. But Bronny James, since his return, he has not been great. I think even Bronny James would admit that. I think LeBron, if you got some true serum in him, would admit it as well. Bronny's been good, but not great, averaging about 5.5 points per game, 2 or so rebounds, 2.5 assists for a USC team that is bluntly just very struggling immensely this year. Now, it's nobody's fault. I think Andy Enfield's really good, but they've dealt with all sorts of injuries, Boogie Ellis, Isaiah Collier, whatever. Obviously, Bronny's off the court situation. But the bottom line is when we look at Bronny James about 3/4 of the way through his first season in college basketball, it has not gone well for either him or his team. A lot of it out of his control. That's what happens when you miss weeks upon weeks after that terrifying heart incident. But also, again, it is still disappointing nonetheless. And I think even Bronny would tell you that. With that said, though, why we are talking about this, we wouldn't normally be talking about it, but there was news on Monday related to this when ESPN draft expert Jonathan Givony, and I got a lot to say about him, put out his first mock draft for 2025, okay? So we're not talking about this upcoming draft. We are talking about 2025. That is where all of the high school seniors that are currently in high school will be drafted at the top, a Cooper Flagg, maybe an Ace Bailey that's going to Rutgers, a couple other guys that will be drafted up pretty high. But the 2025 mock draft came out, and Bronny, for the first time, got moved to the 2025 draft. The insinuation, of course, being that he's probably not going to get drafted this year. And of course, this comes after about a year ago, when ESPN first started putting out their 2024 mock drafts. When they first started putting out their 2024 mock drafts, remember, ESPN had Bronny as a top 10 pick. So when this news comes out, two things happen. One, everybody deems Bronny to be a disappointment, which I don't think is fair at all, and I'm going to talk about it. But two, it becomes an even bigger story because not only is Bronny not on these mock drafts, but his dad, LeBron James, decided to tweet about it. So here is what LeBron tweeted about this whole situation as Bronny James is tumbling down mock draft boards. This is what he tweeted. He said, "Can y'all please just let the kid be a kid and enjoy college basketball? The work and results will ultimately do the talking no matter what he decides to do. If y'all don't know, he doesn't care what a mock draft says. He just works, earned, not given." He then sent out a second tweet. "And to all the other kids out there striving to be great and just keep your head down, blinders on, and keep grinding, these mock drafts don't matter one bit. I promise you, only the work matters. Let's talk real basketball, people. Peace out emoji, king crown emoji." So that was why this became a story, because LeBron tweeted about it after Bronny James was removed from the 2024 mock draft. What I am here to say is a couple things. One, I actually agree with part of LeBron's message. I have said for years, we put way too much pressure on these young kids. If it was up to me, I would do completely away with mock drafts because it puts unrealistic expectations in these kids' heads. And I think the younger they start getting hyped, generally it does not work out well. There are exceptions, most notably LeBron James himself, but Amani Bates, Mikey Williams, these kids that get identified in high school, in middle school, early high school, it rarely works out well. So I agree with LeBron on that. Where my issue comes is that if anyone is to blame for Bronny struggling this year and for Bronny not meeting expectations, there are really only two places to blame. One is LeBron James, and the other is ESPN, and we'll talk about them in a minute, for putting Bronny in their top 10 in their mock draft in the first place, when everybody in basketball knew this kid was not a top 10 pick, not because he's not a good kid, a good person, a good whatever, but because nobody in basketball actually thought he was a top 10 prospect. Let's start with the LeBron James side of things, because listen, I know LeBron's a dad. I'm not here to criticize him as a husband, as a father, as a person off the court. On the court, he's a little annoying at times, whatever. But off the court, he's, by all accounts, raised three great children. I know people at USC that adore Bronny, that think he's the greatest kid in the world. But any talk of Bronny being a one and done, it starts with LeBron James. As a matter of fact, I can tell you something. I'm going to tell you some stuff over the next 10 minutes that you will not hear from anybody else. But what I can tell you, Bronny essentially did not have a real recruitment, and it was because of no one other than LeBron James. So what I can tell you, first of all, LeBron has insinuated since Bronny was essentially a freshman in high school, maybe even earlier, that Bronny was going to do 1 year at USC, he was going to go pro, and he was going to play in the NBA. That is not my opinion. That is a fact. LeBron has been talking about this for years. Remember, LeBron is the guy about 4 or 5 years ago. He started making Ken Griffey Jr. comparisons. Now, for a lot of our younger audience under the age of 25, it's hard to believe, but LeBron is about the same age as I am, okay? And when I was a kid, Ken Griffey Jr., this is the part that's hard to believe. Ken Griffey Jr. was as big as any athlete on the planet. Maybe Michael Jordan was a little bit bigger, but Ken Griffey Jr. was a superstar. The kid, the lefty swing, the Nikes. I've told this story before, but one year I got an official Ken Griffey Jr. jersey for my birthday, and I wore it to school every single day until my mom literally told me, you have to stop wearing it every day. You are going to be the gross, smelly kid that everybody thinks that only has one change of clothes. By the way, if you only have one change of clothes, I'm not criticizing people, whatever, but my mom's insinuation was you can't wear the same thing to school every day. People are going to look at you funny. Anyway, hope that didn't offend anybody. That wasn't the intention, whatever. The bottom line was Ken Griffey Jr. was huge when LeBron was a kid, when I was a kid. And LeBron has said publicly many times that his goal was to have his Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr. moment. For people who don't know, Ken Griffey Jr.'s rookie year, he played in a game with his father, Ken Griffey Sr. There's great videos. There's great pictures. I think there was a pop-up and Ken Griffey Jr. kind of called off his father or kind of got in his way and with his left hand kind of scooped the ball out, whatever. But I just bring it up because Ken Griffey Jr. played with his dad in the big leagues, and LeBron has publicly said, I want that moment. I want to step on an NBA court with my son. And so what I can tell you, I am 100% certain on this. Because LeBron had been making those comments for years, Bronny didn't really have a recruitment. Everybody thinks, oh, it was this school, it was that school, it was Ohio State, it was Oregon, it was this, it was that. I'm here to tell you, USC, especially late, was really the only school interested. And the bottom line is they only took Bronny. You can look this up. It's a fact. After they had several players enter the transfer portal. Reese Dixon Waters, who's now at San Diego State. Trey White, who's now at Louisville. It wasn't until those guys left that USC pushed all their chips in the middle on Bronny. And the reason they did that and the reason Bronny was still available was because nobody wanted to recruit him. Not because he's not a good player, not because he's not a good kid, but because your father has already said publicly, you are going to be a one and done. And so because of that, if you are Ohio State, USC, Oregon, whoever, and you bring this kid in, you can't play him in front of players that are better than him, but you also can't bring him in to sit on the bench. Bronny James sitting on the bench is not going to fly anywhere in America. And so it wasn't until USC, kind of that wing third guard spot, got thin that they went hard after Bronny. There's a reason he didn't commit until May. It's because everybody was scared to recruit him because they didn't want to bring him in and feel forced to play him. USC had no choice. That is an indisputable fact. You can argue with me if you want, and I know many of you will. It's the truth. By the way, I should mention, before we get to the other part of this, the ESPN part, it is also worth noting, LeBron going after the mock drafts. It's funny because LeBron literally said 2 weeks ago, what was it about? Maybe not 2 weeks ago, but about 5 weeks ago. Bronny could help the Lakers right now. So again, I'm not here to tear LeBron apart. By all accounts, he's raised a great son, but LeBron did his son no favors in this instance. The other thing that I think is worth noting is that while LeBron has a lot of blame in this, you know who else has a lot of blame as well? ESPN and ESPN's draft expert, Jonathan Givony. I don't generally go after other media members, but at the same time, I try to always, listen, I always try to keep it real with my audience, right? Cat Williams said 2024 is the year that the truth comes out. And I only go after other media members if they come at me first or if I think they're disingenuous. And I think it was completely 110% disingenuous for Jonathan Givony, who has a voice in the draft process, to put Bronny James in the top 10 a year ago. I'll be blunt with you guys. I'll keep it real. I don't really care. I'm just going to tell you the truth. When that mock draft came out, it was, to use a bad pun, it was mocked. It was made fun of. Not because Bronny's not a good kid, but because there was no one at any level of basketball that truly believed that Bronny was trending to be a top 10 prospect a year from now. When the draft came out, when the mock draft came out this time last year, there was no high school basketball evaluator. All the guys that cover this 365 days a year, none of them thought Bronny was a top 10 pick. I'm positive of it because I talked to a lot of them when it happened. There was no college coach that thought that Bronny was a top 10 pick. There are no NBA scouts that thought Bronny was a top 10 pick. And so it was largely mocked when ESPN put Bronny in their top 10 of their 2024 mock draft in the first place. Everybody made fun of it. Everybody knew what it was about. It was one of two things. It was either done to create interest in a mock draft for 18 months from now, or it was done as a favor to some agent, very likely Clutch, Rich Paul, the people that, of course, run LeBron James. You can fight me on this. You can argue it. It's pretty indisputable. I'll also say, and this is what the sad part is that after I kind of put that out on Twitter, I had a lot of people come back to me and say, oh, Bronny's overrated. Bronny is not overrated, okay? Let me defend Bronny James. Bronny James is not overrated because, again, nobody outside of one mock draft on ESPN had him as a top 10 pick. As a matter of fact, just go back to the 24/7 rankings. Bronny was ranked the 28th ranked player in the class of 2024. When has the 28th ranked player, a four-star recruit, ever been a top 10 pick? It doesn't happen very often, okay? In general, you know what the 28th ranked player is? And we have a smart college hoops audience, so you guys know. Four-star, anywhere outside of the top 10 or 12, probably a 2 or 3 year college player, or a guy who is going to leave college before he really makes an impact. The guys who can step into the league from day one and make an impact. Paolo Banchero, number 1, number 2 player in his class. Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith, top 3 players all in their class. They went 1, 2, 3 in the draft. Evan Mobley, Jalen Green, whoever. Those guys are all top 5 guys. You get out of the top 15, top 20, it's a total crapshoot. Just for fun, I went back and looked it up. Number 28 ranked player in the class of 2023 was Bronny James. Number 28 ranked player in the class of 2022. You know who that was? A kid by the name of Vince Iwuchukwu. Ironically, he plays for USC. If you have never heard of him, it is because he is a very good college player, but he ain't a great one. He actually, sadly, had a serious heart condition as well, serious heart situation. He actually, I'm not being sarcastic here, went into cardiac arrest himself, so he missed some time. But he's now a sophomore averaging 5.7 points, 4.6 rebounds per game. By the way, the number 29 ranked player in the class of 2022 was Jaden Bradley. Played at Arizona, ended up transferring, still playing college basketball. Number 28 player in the class of 2021, Bryce McGowens. Made no impact in college, went one and done, was a second-round pick. So the idea that Bronny was somehow overrated, he was not overrated. He was actually properly rated as a guy who could one day be an NBA player after 2 or 3 years of college basketball. And so it frustrates me that people are blaming him for being some sort of disappointment when he was set up for failure. blame LeBron James. Blame Jonathan Givony and ESPN, because I am here to tell you, if you want to fight me on it, I don't care. There was no one in basketball that thought this kid was a top 10 pick. I'll leave it up to you to judge what you think of ESPN and their draft coverage, whatever. I'm not going to dig into it any further. But like I said, there was no one. And so it was either done as a favor to the agency, or it was done to get people to click on their mock drafts. There has never been an instance where a fringe top 30 prospect, the 28th ranked prospect, was going in the top 10 in any mock draft until it was LeBron James' son. So blame LeBron James and blame ESPN, but don't blame Bronny. I hope he does whatever's best for him. If he isn't happy in college, if he had the health scare and he wants to try his hand as a pro, I wish him luck. If he doesn't, if he wants to come back to school, I wish him luck as well. If he wants to go somewhere besides USC, I wish him luck as well. I just hope he does whatever is best for him. But do not tell me that Bronny James is overrated, because he's not. He's actually perfectly properly rated. Nobody thought he was a one and done. Blame LeBron James. Blame ESPN.